The scientific method provides a fundamental framework for research. It is defined as a systematic, controlled, empirical, and critical investigation of natural phenomena guided by theory and hypotheses about the presumed relationships among such phenomena. While qualitative research follows a similar series of steps, the systematic and controlled portion positions quantitative studies as being designed and carried out in a well-defined, rigorous manner such that we may be confident in the results. Because the researcher is the primary instrument of data collection and analysis, researcher subjectivity, called bias in quantitative research, is accounted for in various ways. Where in quantitative research you would seek to eliminate the researcher's perspective, some qualitative research encourages it, as it may lead to new insights and further exploration and understanding of the phenomenon studied. Reflexivity is often used in qualitative researchers to account for this. This relates to describing one's personal background and orientation and how one views the phenomenon being studied, such as what they assume to be important features or how they see the context. This influences how research is designed, enacted, interpreted, and represented. So if we think of the concept of bias, it doesn't fit well with certain assumptions. For instance, empiricism refers to the idea that subjective knowledge is checked against objective reality. We theorize potential relationships about certain phenomena, and then objective data is collected, examined, and reported to either support or refute our ideas. Bias essentially refers to something being skewed from the way things really are, but if it is assumed there are multiple perspectives, then bias from the singular truth is not possible. Thus, qualitative researchers engage in reflexivity and are transparent about their perspectives, but do not always aim to be non-biased. In health research, there are several clear and defined steps in the process which can be broken down as follows. First, the investigator starts by identifying a problem, for instance, where something that is done in practice does not achieve the desired result. Once the researcher has formulated a general idea or focus for the study, the next step is to undertake a formal review of the literature, which entails a systematic and detailed search of all prior research related to the topic of interest. In this way, researchers can ensure they are not simply replicating what has already been done, but instead attempting to expand upon the current body of knowledge. It is important to acknowledge that, oftentimes, it is unnecessary to reinvent the wheel and come up with an entirely novel or groundbreaking idea for our research. Once the researcher has completed their literature review, they will have started to narrow down and refine their research question. Quantitative studies use previous literature in a deductive way to provide direction for research questions and hypotheses. This ensures that there is a nuanced and detailed understanding of our research topic and place where the research question and subsequent study fit within the broader academic landscape. The quantitative research then generates a hypothesis. Most quantitative research studies try to move away from simple descriptions of data and towards inference. Inference seeks to understand what we can generalize about a population from our sample and how certain we can be about these statements. In qualitative research, the aim is not to represent a population, as it is assumed that knowledge cannot be generalized since it is dynamic and context-dependent. Instead, they may aim for their data to resonate with certain people or to show the complexities of the participants' stories. These differences in approach mean that qualitative studies often include smaller sample sizes that are purposefully, not randomly selected. While a small sample size limits the representativeness of the sample to the population from a quantitative perspective, this is not a limit from a qualitative perspective. Next, the researcher designs the study by specifying the sample to be studied, choosing how and when data will be collected, and determining what type of statistical analysis will be used to compare the two groups. In qualitative research, a methodology is similar to the design study and has been defined as a bundle of skills, assumptions, and practices the researcher employs as he or she moves from paradigm to the empirical world. Qualitative research follows a methodology such as grounded theory or phenomenology. Just as quantitative research can be divided into types of designs like experimental and quasi-experimental, qualitative research can be divided into schools of inquiry or methodologies. Once the researcher has made all of the key decisions regarding study design, he or she will write a research proposal that clearly summarizes key background literature and the specifics of the study design or methodology. This proposal is then submitted to the Institutional Ethics Review Board, who will review and ultimately approve whether the study is given the green light to move forward. Once the researcher has obtained ethics approval, they begin to do the work they described in their protocol. Carrying out the study is the most time-consuming aspect of research and requires organization, dedication, and diligence. In quantitative studies, this work may involve recruiting participants, ensuring treatments or interventions are allocated accordingly, administering outcome measures at the appropriate time points, and collecting and organizing the data gleaned from each interaction with the study participant. For qualitative research, it is important to note that just collecting qualitative data, like open-ended responses to questions or doing a focus group, does not make a study qualitative in nature. A qualitative study should employ a philosophical and methodological approach that is consistent with its assumptions, use of methods, and intended outcomes. Finally, the researcher conducts the analyses that were described in the protocol at the inception of the study. In quantitative studies, it is very important to stick to your predetermined plans, as any deviation from the plans may be seen as an attempt to skew the results, potentially leading to flawed statistical analyses and biased conclusions. Conversely, qualitative researchers vary in their philosophical positions and therefore have various ways of interpreting the data. The researcher concludes their review by drafting a manuscript and publishing their work in a peer-reviewed journal where appropriate.